Welcome to a new video, and in this video I want to do the comparison between the Huawei P30, the flagship device from 2 years, against the entry-level mid-range device Redmi Note 10 Pro from Xiaomi. And I want to compare those two devices specifically because people asked me to compare those, and we want to try out and see which of those devices is better and if this entry-level mid-range device can compete with the flagship of 2 years ago. So let's get started. So let's start comparing them physically. First of all, this is 6.1 inch. You can see the P30 is a lot smaller than the Redmi Note 10 Pro device. And you can see also that this still has a notch because it is like 2 years old flagship or entry-level flagship device, 32 megapixel, and this one has a punch hole like a modern smartphone should have. Let's maybe open up an application like the Play Store. You can see it clearly. 60 megapixel punch hole camera. When it comes to other specs, we have a Kirin 990 on the P30 and we have a Snapdragon 732G, 7 nanometers, 8 nanometers. They perform in terms of battery usage very similar, but the Kirin 980 is a lot quicker than the Snapdragon 732G when it comes to tasks. So what you will see mostly when I open up applications here, the P30, 2 years old flagship, is a little bit faster than the Redmi Note 10 Pro. But the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the more fluid animations because of the AMOLED display allowing to use 120 Hz, where the P30 only uses 60 Hz. But there's a difference. When I scroll through, you don't notice it, but if you do some heavily tasks or something's loading in the background, sometimes this 120 Hz will dip down to 90 or even lower, and you can notice that. So that is not running constantly at 120 Hz. On the P30, nothing of this happens. Usually it runs very smoothly without big issues. So what we want to do now is open up some applications. So let's try the Play Store first. 1, 2, 3. And you can see almost at the same time, I think slight edge on the P30 maybe. Let's open up another store, which is the F-Droid store. 1, 2, 3. And again, the P30 in this case a lot quicker than the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Let's open up Reddit. 1, 2, 3. And you can see Reddit also on the P30 a little bit quicker in starting the application and loading stuff from the web. Also, it looks like the P30 is the clear winner here, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro is, I'm not sure what it is doing. Now it is loading something. You can see a lot slower in loading times for some reason. We can open up 9gag, for example. 1, 2, 3. And again, the P30 loads a bit quicker. And here it's asking us about stuff here as well. And you can see that, here it is a bit quicker again on the P30. We have, of course, also some other applications that we can start to try out, just like, for example, games. So let me go here and find some games. So let's start some games like Subway Surfer. 1, 2, 3. And you can see that the performance on the P30 is quicker. It has a better processor, it has a faster system, and I can set up an age here and say okay. And you can see also when it comes to loading, they both are running fine in terms of details here without big issues. And you can hear the sound maybe in the background as well. And here we come to another very interesting fact, that the Redmi Note 10 Pro has stereo speakers. So we have a speaker at the bottom, by the way, USB Type-C 2.0, and we have a stereo speaker. We have a speaker on the top, as well as a headphone jack and an IR blaster. And the same goes for almost the same goes for the P30. We have speaker on the bottom. That's the only speaker though, USB Type-C but 3.0, and a headphone jack as well. And on the top we only have an IR blaster as well as a microphone somewhere here. There you can see the IR blaster. There. So stereo speakers here, only one speaker here. Let's try one last game, Temple Run 2, 1, 2, 3. And we can see again the speed is a bit quicker on this. And welcome to Temple Run 2. No, confirm. I understand. And both want to try to install Google Play. I don't want it. And you can see that the P30 again is a bit quicker in loading, has a more powerful graphics card, and the Kirin 980 here is definitely quicker than the Snapdragon 732 here. So no thanks, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. We just play. And you can see, yeah, this is how it looks like in terms of playing. The Redmi Note 10 Pro has the potential that it is running quicker in some games because of the 120 Hz, but not all games are really using the 120 Hz. So this is a difference here that you can clearly see. And yeah, this is one difference that you can see when using the applications on a day-to-day task. The 120 Hz is just more fluid, but it dips down a few times. So this is one thing that you have to keep in mind. Let's take a look around the device. We have both devices have the power button here on the right side, power button with a fingerprint reader, a volume rocker. The same here, we have a power button and a volume rocker, but we have an in-display fingerprint reader that I can just simply use this to unlock, and here I have to unlock it with this. And yeah, we have cameras on the back. You can see the camera bump here. I have like a case on, but still the camera bump is a lot less big on the P30. We have 40 megapixel main camera, shooter, tele 8 megapixel and 16 megapixel super wide angle that also features autofocus. And here on the Redmi Note 10 Pro we have a 108 megapixel main shooter, we have 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel tele macro and 2 megapixel depth sensor. The ultra wide angle has no autofocusing, but the 108 megapixel main sensor is a bit bigger than the 40 megapixel sensor on the P30. What we want to do right now is compare the photo quality, and then we come back here and I do some conclusions about those two devices. So let's start this comparison by using the cameras. I'm using the P30 right now, the main camera sensor. This is why I'm so close up here. Focusing should work fine, should focus on my face as well. If I'm going too far away, I notice that it's losing my focus, but this is a problem, or using my face. But this is a problem with all those main camera sensors that get too big, like this 1/1.7 inch sized sensor. The good thing is it has OIS and EIS, so-called AIS by Huawei, which is pretty nicely for vlogging. For example, it stabilizes everything wonderfully. This is full HD 30 frames per second, but I can also go, and this is the flagship advantage, to 60 frames per second and 4K, and it's still stabilized on the P30, which is pretty nice, I think. And of course I also can use this in 4K, but also full HD 30 like I'm using here right now to keep it fair and square with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. I can switch the camera during recording, so let's go and do this. I can zoom out here, and now you can see roughly the same arm length away. You can see a lot more, and the good thing is there's still focusing for the ultra wide sensor. It doesn't have OIS, but it has electronic image stabilization, and this one works also pretty nicely and is very good for vlogging. I like the Huawei phones, especially for vlogging. I can plug in my microphone here directly via the 3.5mm headphone jack and can record audio via this externally directly in the camera application, which is pretty good. And this is why I like those Huawei phones. This is why I'm vlogging mostly with the Mate XS or the P30 or the Mate 30 Pro and so on. So this is the example of the P30. Let's see and try out the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So now the Redmi Note 10 Pro, it has me, I hopefully think so, in autofocus as well. I have this roughly the same arm length difference, but you can see the bigger background blur because this one has a bigger sensor, 1/1.52 inch sized sensor on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. It doesn't have optical image stabilization, only electronic image stabilization, so I think it's still working great. No issues with this. Autofocus should also work nicely, and colors should look nicely as well. And I like this sensor. It is better, I think, than the P30's main sensor in terms of video, because you get this nice background blur, and because of the larger sized sensor. Also, I think in this darker situations it tends to have a little bit lighter colors as well. We don't have the option to switch to the ultra wide angle though when recording video, so I can zoom in but I cannot zoom out to the ultra wide angle video, so I have to stop this video to switch to the ultra wide angle right now. So now the ultra wide angle, you can see it is also very wide, and I also have the option to use image stabilization here for the ultra wide angle, but there's no, as you can see, no focusing here on the ultra wide angle camera lens. But you can still see I have my headphone plugged in, or my microphone plugged in via the headphone jack to record audio, so this is also possible on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. I hope my hand is not in the shot. Anyway, this is the example of the Redmi Note 10 Pro and the video capture there. Also pretty nice, also very usable. I just don't like that I don't have the option to switch to the ultra wide angle if I want to during recording of the video. This is some kind of limitation that you have with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So again, I switched to the P30, and what I want to do right now is show you some shots that I took with the P30 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro to see which of those has the better camera system in terms of shooting photos as well. Take a look at the high dynamic range and all the other things right now. So have a lot of fun with this, and I will do some nice other vlogging kind of tests and videos, and see how good this focusing system on the P30 in comparison with the Redmi Note 10 Pro, because I have the, after viewing the main camera sensor videos, I got to the conclusion that the P30 has a problem with focusing, keeping my face in focus, and I don't have this problem on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, so that might be an advantage for the Redmi Note 10 Pro then. But yeah, let's see. So let's take a look at the photos and compare them one by one. On the left you will see always the P30 photos, and on the right you will always see the Redmi Note 10 photos. So let's get started. First of all, you can see that in night mode, we will start with the dark photos, with the night mode photos. We have a similar situation. If we don't zoom in, you can see not much of a difference here in terms of colors. Maybe you can see the light is a bit brighter on the P30 in comparison to the Redmi Note 10 Pro. But as soon as we zoom in, we can see and spot difference. Just like if I zoom on this car, you can see here that this is very clear and sharp. I can read the phone number here of this company, and if I try to zoom in here, you can see it is not very sharp. It is just like as if it missed the focus point and was focusing on something else. So let's search for the focus point. Where could it be? Is it here? No, it's not this car. Here you can see this car is also sharp. So it seems like it didn't find any focus point here, and it's a bit unsharp. Or maybe the algorithm for stacking up all the photos together did not work as good as on the P30. So let's take a look at another photo. So maybe I was like too shaky. Let's take a look at this challenging photo, because we have lights here that shine directly in our sensor, and we're using the night mode. And what we can see here clearly already is like a bit of more brightness on the left, but a green tint, and also here on the right on the Redmi Note 10 Pro also a green tint, but a bit darker in general. So I think still that we can see here the Huawei phone has the better night mode, and I can show you this by zooming in. You can see this doesn't really look sharp, but this doesn't really look sharp either, and it even looks like worse, I would say, than on the Huawei. And if you go back and take a look at the brickworks in the wall here of this house, you can clearly see that there are different colors still, and you can see also here that at least slightly that there are bricks there. On the Xiaomi, however, it's one wall. You don't see anything here. And yeah, this is despite it having 12 megapixels, as you can see here, and this one, or I can also show you this here, it has 12 megapixel, and the P30 only 10 megapixel. Of course, granted 40 megapixels downscaled, or 4 pixels binned together in one, 10 megapixels only. I can see more details on the P30 in comparison to the Redmi Note 10. So this is a night mode. I can show you another night mode shot, which clearly shows again that the Redmi Note 10 Pro is lacking in terms of night mode. First of all, what you can see is, of course, granted, the night mode here on the P30, you can see the highlights are blown out a bit more. You get like this little ray of light here, which you don't get on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. But as soon as you zoom in a bit, you can see how it falls apart. You can see clearly that this is like still unsharp, and there's motion blur going on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. We try to read the sign, it is all motion blurred. Here it is overexposed, but at least it seems to be sharp somehow. And if we take a look at the brickwork again, the wall here in the background, you can see it is smearing on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. You don't see the bricks, and here on the P30 impressively you can see the bricks clearly. The same goes for the sign here of this train station. You can see it's sharp, and here you can still read it, but it's not very sharp. And the same goes for the brickwork in the background here. And you can see also the trash bin, even this is like sharp, and here it looks like it is blurry. So I think 1-0 for Huawei when it comes to night mode. They are not beatable there. This was in night, and now we're going to a not nighttime shot, but a more dimmer shot. And here we can see the same exact issues with the night mode on. Actually, it's not the night mode, it's even it didn't kick in, so I did not even went to the night mode. I just took a normal photo with both sensors, and what we can see here also in darker conditions, we can see clearly this is sharp, and here it's get a bit details is lost on the P30. It cannot perform magic, and you can see probably some noise in the background here. But if you go in here to the Redmi Note 10 Pro, we can see here clearly the difference. Again, it is very unsharp here for some reason. You can see the noise already creeping in. There's a lot of noise. Let's take a look here, and just it's like a mess on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So much noise. And just take a look at this chimney here with this lighting. It is clearly seen and visible on the P30, and here it is almost as if it's lost in the blue sky. And the same goes for the crossing here, which should spell Bayer, so for Bayer Leverkusen, but both are not really readable in this case. And of course to the edge it is like both a mess, I would say, but the P30 does better here as well. So in nighttime there is a big difference, I would say, and the P30 still is the clear winner in nighttime photos. When it comes to macro shots, I get a mixed bag somehow, mixed feeling, I would say, because I saw already better macro shots, but for the sake of it I couldn't get a better macro shot than this here on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And with the super macro mode on the P30, which uses the wide angle lens, I can get this one here. Of course, granted, I think this is like also you see some artifacts already on the P30, but this is a bit blurry here on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So I think the P30 does a little bit better in terms of this, which is also again very surprising to me because the Redmi has its own macro lens. When it comes to normal daylight shots, what we will see here is a color difference. We can see a more greenish, more cooler kind of color on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. You can see this here is definitely greener, and here it's more yellowish tint towards the P30. And we can see here right now also, for some reason, the P30 detected the object that I want to have in focus, which is here this what is it, air humidifier, and it's clearly in focus. You can see here the nice background blur towards here, which it just utilizes the 1/1.7 inch sensor. And here for some reason it is not really sharp. You can see here the difference. So it didn't focus on this. I'm not sure what it focused on, the Redmi Note 10 Pro, I have to say, because here you can see slightly blurry, but in comparison that it should be blurrier, but it is not. You can see that the P30 has a blurrier background here, so I'm not sure what this focused on here as well. It's slightly more in focus. So, and you can see here again that the difference in terms of and it's not sharpening applied to the P30. I think it is clearly that it has this in focus, and you can see here clearly visible and readable. Here it's also readable, but it's not so clear anymore. And I see noise already creeping in the shot of the Redmi, and we can take a look at the shutter speed here to see if this is the issue, and I think it is the issue. So the shutter speed on the P30 is 150s, and here on the Redmi it is a shutter speed of 133. And as the Redmi doesn't have any optical image stabilization, yeah, it has to be shaky then with this shutter speed. And the P30, I think it has on the main sensor, it has optical image stabilization, so it can perform good. Or even if it doesn't have optical image stabilization, it knows that 150s is the lowest I can go, otherwise it will be very shaky. And yeah, this is what you can see here right now. ISO is also a difference. For some reason, the I think this might also explain why the P30 does better in low light. It shows ISO 200 here, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro had to go to ISO 581, which is a lot more, and this is why you can see noise already creeping in. So this is like a bit for technical analysis. Let's go to the ultra-wide, and here we can see a very interesting thing. First of all, it is a bit overexposed, but it has something to do with the ultra-wide angle lens on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, because it is much wider than the one, or not much wider, but it is wider, definitely wider than the one on the P30. You can see here the box, a lot more contours of the box, and you can see the end of the plant here. You cannot see the end of the plant, and you cannot see much of the box here. So you can see that the this ray of light that is coming in here is simply because there's a window there, and as it's so wide angle, it is just like getting then this kind of lens flare glare effect here on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. When it comes to the difference in terms of resolution, we have 8 megapixels here and we have 16 megapixels here, so you can definitely get a different kind of resolution. You can see, if I zoom in here, only you see the big difference at 100%. What this resolution does, you can clearly read stuff in here, and here on the bottom you cannot read anymore the stuff that's there. So this is clearly a difference. Another difference is maybe also the colors. I think again the colors here, especially if you look here, are a bit different. It's a bit punchier on the P30 and a bit more contrast as well. Let's go to the next one, which is shows you the difference in terms of zoom, because the P30 has a 3 times zoom lens, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro doesn't have any zoom lens. It's just cropping into the main sensor, the 108 megapixel sensor, main sensor. It's cropping in, and 2 times is the default that you have, and this is the difference that you can get. And if I zoom in here 100%, you can see it's also not perfect, but at least, yeah, it is still readable. You can see here applying some sharpening as well. If we go in here 100%, what do you think is better? I can see noise creeping in that I don't see so much here on the P30 again. Maybe again a difference in the ISO, yeah, 125 and 540 again. So the sensor on the P30 is a little bit better in terms of dealing with light. Then we go to the next shot, which is now the 3x shot, just to show you that you can also go into 3x digital zoom then, which will then apply some digital magic. So it's not a crop into the sensor only, but it's then also zooming in digitally. And then interestingly enough, you can see clearly those things are readable, and it appears to be sharper on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And if I zoom in, you can see, yeah, it is also very, very noisy, and you can see why it is so sharp, because there's sharpening applied, and you can see it, the noise everywhere and the sharpening everywhere. And you don't have this mess of this sharpening going on, this aggressive sharpening on the P30. So in general, I would say the P30 is the better one here. Now this is 5x zoom. The P30 has hybrid zoom 5x, so where it also uses some digital analysis to zoom in 5x, and you can also zoom in 5x here with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And I have to say, if I just have it zoomed out, I think the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the edge here slightly, because it has the more natural colors, and the P30, yeah, has this yellowish tint to it. If I zoom in here, you can see it's a mess. If I zoom in here, you can see it's also a mess, but it's using more aggressive noise reduction on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, where it is less obvious than here, where it is clearly visible. So the next picture shows also again the color difference. I have my 8-bit do gamepad here that I photographed, and what you can see clearly on the left is this yellowish tint again. So this is not the color of the gamepad, I have to say. And here you can see, yeah, this is the color of the gamepad. But you can see clearly also another issue or another problem that results in a bit of lack of details. You can see here on this analog stick, we can see this rubber, and you can see this fine texture on the rubber that it's almost not visible on the Redmi Note 10 Pro's photo. But this has something to do with, I think, the also here, if you go here to the side, this is sharp, this is a bit softer now. The middle buttons are both, I think, pretty sharp, though I think the edge is slightly on the P30. So again, I think it decided to focus on this area here, which makes it, of course, oh, this line is software problem. Anyway, this makes it, it's an issue of the sensor. The sensor is so big that it cannot have probably everything in focus of this gamepad at this distance. And here you can see this is slightly out of focus on the P30, where the Redmi Note 10 Pro has it better in focus, and you can see again a color difference here. The yellow here is a bit overblown yellow, and the same goes for the red. So I think the Redmi Note 10 Pro has the more natural colors in this case when it comes to this. Otherwise, background blur, what can I say, it's a bit blurrier on the Redmi Note 10 Pro maybe, but it is pretty comparable. But you can see also my hand here, this is more my skin color. And maybe it is not. Doch, yeah, it is. This is more my skin color than this. This is too yellowish, too much yellow applied to the photo, I would say. So this is a general issue that you can see in all my photos here. And the same goes on for this photo, for example, where you can clearly see again that there is a slightly bit yellower, so slightly bit more punchier the color here on the P30, and a more realistic on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. In terms of high dynamic range, it was not a sunny day, so you probably don't see much of a difference here. But what you can see here clearly is also the details are lacking here on the P30, and here on the Redmi Note 10 Pro you have lots more details. You can see the leaves of this bush, where this is like more of a blurry mess in this case, and you can see also here this sticker is more sharp than here. So this is the automatic mode on both, and I didn't choose a focus point. This is what they decided on. Then the next one, this is where I recorded my videos. Again, a bit difference in color, a bit more cooler colors on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, a bit more realistic, a bit more boosted colors, a bit more yellowish colors on the P30. We can zoom in here, and we can zoom in here, and we can see what we can see here right now is also that the Redmi Note 10 Pro seems to be using a more aggressive sharpening applied. This is a little bit unsharp, but it doesn't have this sharpening filter applied. And you can see it here in the grass as well, that here I think the Redmi is losing to the P30. Could be because the P30 has a bit more contrast as well. You can see it also in the tree, but the P30 I think has the more details here in the grass, on the leaves or whatever that is on the ground here. The sign is both readable. I would say there's not much of a difference here, and yeah, this is nicely done as well. Then exposure again to the sky, and where we can see that I think Huawei has the edge also in high dynamic range. You can see that here we have more contrast and a slightly darker picture on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. We can see this here on this truck, the color of the sticker. This is more reddish or brownish, and this is more dark brownish. So you see the difference here as well. And these construction site signs, also this red that they have here, it is really this color, this colorful red, this more orange-ish red than this darker red that you can see on the Redmi. So here the Redmi I think has an issue in terms of color, and the same goes for the red building here. It was not as dark, it was a bit more red like on the P30. So this is also pretty interesting. Next photo, again testing out the various different camera lenses. This is the default one. What we can see here, more bluish sky, might be also because it's using a little bit cooled down tones, and this is a bit more yellowish tones to it. In general, the sign here readable, not really I think. And in terms of sharpening, maybe the Redmi Note 10 Pro is sharpening a bit more than the P30. But I'll be totally honest, it's not much of a difference in this photo. Besides the color shift, there's not much difference in terms of details. When it comes to zooming in, this is 2 times on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. This is how it looks like. You can see, oh, this is not really good. This is 3 times on the Huawei P30, and you can see, wow, yeah, this is a real 3 times zooming camera, and this is really a crop into the sensor. You can clearly see it as well. And if you go next to the ultra wide angle, this is how it looks like. The ultra wide angle is the weak point of the Redmi Note 10 Pro, I would say. Too dark, the exposure here. High dynamic range is missing completely. It is too dark here in the front, and here wonderfully the 16 megapixel ultra wide is doing a good job. If I zoom in, of course 16 megapixels, you have more resolution to zoom in. As you can see here, you get more detail, even though it is processed heavily and sharpened and over sharpened, and here I think more natural on the Xiaomi. It is still I prefer the ultra wide angle photo of the P30 here, just because it has a better exposure. And here we can see a direct comparison when I go to, was it 3 times, let me check, this is 5 times hybrid zoom on the P30 and 5 times zoom on the Xiaomi, and here you can see it's a mess on the Xiaomi, and here it looks decent still on the, you can see some details here. It's like an oil painting on the Xiaomi, and on the P30 you can clearly see, okay, there's some details still in the flower. So this is the 5 times zoom, how it compares. And then the last thing is okay, this is another 3 times zoom that I tried out. It's still very blurry and messy on the Xiaomi. Then let's go to the selfie one. I had to take a selfie at home because the one didn't work out. Anyway, the selfie picture on the P30, you can see it doesn't have autofocus on the front. You can see, yeah, my beard not very sharp. I don't think I hit the sharpening point here, but it has 32 megapixels at least, so you can zoom in very, very close, and you have some kind of background blur, as you can see here, because it automatically detected my face and tried to blur it out. And here, same thing, 16 megapixels. Maybe I hit the sharpening point a bit better, but it's not, they're both, I think the P30 has an edge here, but they're both not very good. So in general, as you can see here, this is my conclusion in terms of photos. I think the P30 has an edge over the Redmi Note 10 Pro in terms of night times, definitely. In terms of daytime pictures, only if you pixel peep and zoom in. And of course, the more flexibility you get on the P30 because of the zoom lens that you don't have on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And the ultra-wide angle produces better photos, has better high dynamic range, though it has a yellowish tint throughout the range. The P30, I think, in terms of photos, beats the Redmi Note 10 Pro. Even though it's not like a high class difference, there is a difference that you can see here right now. Another test with the Redmi Note 10 Pro, a vlogging test, walking a little bit faster over the street, as you can see here. And yeah, let's walk around here to see how good the camera does perform for vlogging test, how is the autofocus and such things. So let me just grab the phone on the other angle and we see and test out the autofocus again by using my P30. Hold it here into the camera to see if it is focusing on this, and now focusing on me again. And how about if I go a little bit back and stretch my arm out a little bit longer, wider? Is it still having me in focus, or is the background now in focus? That's the big question. I think the Redmi Note 10 Pro has a little bit slightly edge over the P30 still when it comes to focusing. The P30 sometimes just assumes the background is should be in focus and not my face, which is, I think, a bit problematic. So now the same test on the P30. Basically, I'm holding it right now very close to my face. And how's focusing? Is it focusing on the background? Is it focusing on me like it should? Now I'm holding it with a different hand to pull out the Note 10 Pro and to see if it is able to focus on this. I think it should be able to focus on this. Back on my face, it should be able to focus back on my face. And what if I hold it a bit further away? Is it still focusing on me? Change the arm. I think now it loses me and it's focusing on the background instead of my face, which is, I think, main problem for vlogging. If you hold it like this is more comfortable for a vlogging distance, but it's not comfortable to hold because I have the arm stretched out. So I like to have it like this, which is a lot more comfortable for my arm, and then it is in focus. But I think it's a bit too close up then. But you can write in the comment section which of those devices has the better quality and which of those devices has the better focusing system for vlogging, for example. Last but not least, the selfie camera test. I'm using the P30 right now. It has a stabilization, it's recording in full HD 30 frames per second, and it's showing me right now here on the screen AI HDR is enabled, so it is using some kind of HDR optimizations to lit up the scene pretty nicely. This can be also used for vlogging as well. 32 megapixels is pretty fine, but it doesn't have any autofocus, so I have to find the right distance to be in focus. Otherwise, you can see my hand is not in focus right now, so you cannot use it for a product showcase or something like this, or filming some other product or something like this. That's not possible with the P30's front-facing camera. So, and this is now recording with the Redmi Note 10 Pro. It doesn't have any AI HDR or something like this. Stabilization should work fine as well. It has a little bit of a wider field of view, I think, and doesn't have autofocus as well. So you can see here I have to hold it at a specific distance for being in focus, and probably everything is focused. So it's a like fixed focus camera, 16 megapixels, and yeah, still nice and good, nice and sharp. And I think for vlogging this could also work as long as you don't do product showcase, because like I said, there is no autofocusing in this front-facing camera. I think the stabilization might be a little bit worse than the P30, but you can write down in the comment section what you think about the front-facing camera video for vlogging. The Pro mode is also available for both devices, the Redmi Note 10 Pro and the P30 that I'm using right now for filming. You can set up various different things there, like the shutter speed, for example, which is very interesting. If you want to do some cinematic shots, you will need to set up the shutter speed to have this nice little motion blur. I did not set it up right now because the conditions here are changing very quickly. What I try to do is correcting the focusing by using single focus instead of continuous focus, where it should like focus on my face first and then do not lose focus. So this might be very interesting for vlogging. If you want to vlog with the P30, you have the option to do so with it not losing your face in in this vlogging kind of situation, which is, I think, pretty handy if you don't go close or further away from your subject or the thing that you're filming. This might be very interesting as well on the P30. So now the video recording in the Pro mode on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. On the Redmi Note 10 Pro you can also set your focus to manual focus only. There's no option to set it to single focus point, where it would like take the single focus point when you start recording the video and then change the focus point. Then what I used as a cool trick on the P30, which allows me not to lose focus on my face. It's not available on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, so if you have focusing issues with the Redmi Note 10 Pro, which I don't think you should have because it has a better focusing system than the P30, then you cannot fix it by doing so. Anyway, it has basically almost the same UI in terms of Pro mode for photos and for videos, and this is what you can expect in terms of quality. I set the ISO to 50 fixed, the same that I used on my P30, and I think it is working fine as well on the Redmi Note 10 Pro. And it's pretty amazing that you can come so far from a flagship device, 800 euros, to under 300 euros device 2 years later that has almost the same kind of quality, not even better quality in terms of vlogging setup, in terms of camera setup for video. Let's come to the conclusion of both devices and let's talk a bit about battery life. We have a 5020 mAh battery in the Redmi Note 10 Pro, and on the P30 we only have a 3680 mAh battery. But both perform very, very good, and both have almost the same kind of runtime. And this is very interesting because the Redmi Note 10 Pro has 120 Hz and this only 60 Hz. So it's very interesting to see that they can get approximately the same runtime out of those batteries. Of course, the screen is a lot brighter and bigger on the Redmi Note 10 Pro, 120 Hz, so it needs a bigger battery here. But I can imagine if this Huawei system would run on the Xiaomi, I have my feeling that it could be a bit better optimized, so it uses less battery. But this is only my comparison here. Here we have running Android 11, here we are still running on Android 10, so this might be also a difference here in terms of this. As you can see, both are running different operating systems, MIUI versus Motion UI. Probably I will make a separate video about the differences between those. They are very, very similar in certain things and aspects, but certain other things are different. Like, for example, the multitasking view is completely different here, as you can see. And if you go to applications in here, you can see, it looks a bit different. If I go up, I have automatically marked the last application I was in here, as you can see. And if I do this here, you can see we go up. No, it's not the case. So I cannot just press again like I can do here. If I go in here and say, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Okay, you can see it is a bit annoying. Here I can just press to switch quickly between two applications, and this is not so easy possible here. I have to do this. Always click on the right side, and it's a bit slower also with the animations, I think. But this is like nitpicking. In general, it is very impressive. The Redmi Note 10 Pro, for less than 300 euros, you get a device that in most certain everyday today tasks, maybe not games so much, but everyday today tasks with the 120 Hz enabled, can compete with a 2-year-old flagship device, the P30, that in benchmarks still beats the Snapdragon powered Redmi Note 10 Pro. But in everyday today usage, there's not much of a difference. It's also very interesting that this one has stereo speakers, has the better stereo speakers, even if one of those speakers probably will not be the P30 speaker, which is pretty good, but both of them offer a more immersive feeling when listening to music, when listening to videos, or watching some videos, movies, and playing some games, which I don't have so much on the P30, even if this one mono speaker is better than one of those or even both of those speakers on the Redmi Note 10 Pro in terms of bass and frequency response. In general, also when it comes to camera, I think it is clear that the Redmi has the advantage of the bigger sensor, but they're also not so far apart with the rest. I think the P30 has still the better ultra-wide with autofocusing as well, that can be used for super macro. This one has an extra macro camera sensor for this. But I think in terms of everyday usage and taking photos, just point and shoot, both will make you happy. Where the P30 is a little bit more artificial in terms of colors and has a better dynamic range, I think, than the Redmi. Both are very, very close together. So my conclusion is, if you are comparing both of those devices, clearly you get with the P30 a flagship device, so get the P30 if you have the chance to get it very, very cheaply. But keep in mind, it will not get the newest Android updates anymore. There will come HarmonyOS eventually. I'm not sure what will happen with the Google Play services. I think they will keep working, but I cannot guarantee this. If you want a device with stereo speakers that is also good for gaming, that has the newest technology like the 120 Hz, and you want 120 Hz, the fluidness of 120 Hz, then just grab the Redmi Note 10 Pro. You cannot do anything wrong with those two devices. They're both very, very equal. And I think it speaks for the Redmi Note 10 Pro that a new device for under 300 euro can compete with a flagship device from 2 years ago. So this is my conclusion and my comparison between those two devices. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have some questions, you can ask them in the comment section down there, or you can also like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon as well. And that is everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.